Hello and welcome to our another episode. Today in this episode we are going to tell you an interesting and strange story about once upon a time in Mongolia. Whenever people think of Mongolia, only one thing that comes to their mind, and that is Genghis Khan and horses. Perhaps it is because you don't know much about the country, or you either know nothing about it. But there is a lot to know about this beautiful land. It was the largest contiguous land and the biggest empire at that time, stretching across its wide plains, from Siberia to southern China and from Korea to Ukraine. Mongolia has a great long history. So back in the 12th century, before the Mongol Empire formed, the Mongols lived in small, scattered tribes in the East Asian desert and Turkic pastoral nomads led by Khans. You must be wondering about the lives of Mongolia and their survival. So, at that time people of Mongolia herded sheep, cattle, yaks, and camels, and they lived in tents and moved between summer and winter campsites. Nomadic women maintained immense authority, overseeing these movements, many of the herds, and trade. Whereas, men trained for mounted battle, as there were several nomadic groups in Mongolia and they fought each other. But that changed under the rule of Temujin, famously known as Genghis Khan, who was born into an aristocratic Mongol family. Despite growing up in poverty and losing his father at a young age, he swiftly became powerful by creating powerful relationships with other rulers. Now, many of us know only about Genghis Khan that he was very cruel, but actually, it is believed that he was loved by his own people. So, when Genghis Khan came into power, he promoted soldiers based on merits and shared the profits among them fairly. He was the first emperor who did this. His cleverest move was to split up the defeated nomads among his own warriors, so they couldn't join together against him. He became unstoppable, and thanks to his advances, and by 1206, he had unified the inhabitants of the felt-walled tents to become Genghis Khan. Do you know that the Mongols were actually shamanists, and believed that the spirits of nature and their ancestors inhabited the world around them? Genghis Khan thought that the sky god Tengri wanted him to rule over the entire world in his name. With the nomads of the Mongolian plain united, this seemed within reach. Anyone who opposed the Mongols was opposing Tengri's wishes, and they had to die. But, under Genghis Khan, the Mongols conquered eastern Islamic countries and northern China. However, after his death in 1227, his family, known as the Golden Lineage, received the divine mandate. And in the 1230s Genghis Khan's sons and daughters conquered the Turks of Central Asia, and the Russian princes. Then they destroyed 2 European armies in 1241. The Mongols conquered Islamic lands as far as Baghdad in the 1250s, and by 1279 their influence had spread to southern China in the east. But life within the Mongol Empire was not about war, pillage, and destruction. There was more. So, when the Mongols invaded a region, they left their internal politics alone and relied on the local government to rule on their behalf. They let all religions flourish as long as the leaders prayed for them. Even though they frequently kidnapped craftspeople, academics, and engineers, they recognized their value and forcibly relocated them across Asia so they could continue their work. The most valuable produce in the empire was gold brocade, which took silk from China, gold from Tibet, and weavers from Baghdad. The Mongol emperors wore gold brocades, which also lined their tents and coated their horses. Due to the political unification of most of Eurasia, trade along the Silk Road expanded, aided by a complex network of horse couriers and relay posts, which the Mongols prized particularly highly. At sea, trade was still brisk, particularly in blue and white porcelain, which mixed white Mongol China pottery with blue Mongol Iran dye. But this was not to last. Succession to the Great Khan didn't automatically go to the eldest son, but rather allowed brothers, uncles, and cousins to vie for leadership, with senior widows acting as regents for their sons. By 1260, the territory had been divided into 4 independent empires, as a result of a full-fledged civil war over an inheritance among Genghis Khan's grandsons. Later, after the death of the 4th Khan, Monk left no heirs, and which led to a civil war. After the Tuatha Civil War lasted until 1264, and after a number of other wars, the empire fragmented into 4 separate entities. That was the time when they were falling apart, and by this different powers took advantage of their weakness. The Yuan dynasty was destroyed by the Chinese Ming, and Golden Horde was beaten by the Russian Empire. And at last, the British Empire defeated the Chagatai. But do you know that Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia produced leaders like Timur and his descendant Babur, who established the Mongol Empire in India? So, having moved from a nomadic lifestyle to a sedentary one, it is thought that the change in the political system ultimately brought the downfall of the new Mongolian dynasties. Whereas, the Golden Hordem, the most nomadic of the four fragments, lasted the longest for his precise fact. Despite the brief existence of the empire, the Mongols left behind a legacy of global dominance that is still unsurpassed today. That will be all for Mongolia. If you think this video was informative by any means, then don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.